Hi, I'm Stephanie Michelle. Hi, I'm Stephanie Michelle. So today, Donald Trump instituted his tariffs, especially his plan for reciprocal tariffs, which has me deeply concerned, especially considering the astrological cycles, where already economists are suggesting maybe there will be a recession, but where certain astrological factors suggest that there may actually be a depression, because on previous astrological cycles, they coincided with the Great Depression, or at least circumstances which potentially led up to the Great Depression, especially regarding tariffs. Then it seems that Antichrist arises during a period of a Great Depression, essentially. Thank you for coming and watching me today in the Aramaic language of the Sefer Zohar, the Book of Radiance. Ta, Kazeh, come, see, shalom, peace. So as is usual recently, I've been recording these videos very briefly before running off to work. So as is usual recently, I've been recording these videos as I'm rushing off to work with very little time, so I wanted to take a moment and just provide a few more details. So as for some of the examples of the astrology that's happening right now, which may have references to recession and maybe even another depression. First of all, we have the upcoming Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which begins this summer and then actually peaks in the beginning of 2026, where it almost goes exact, I think, in February, but where it reaches pretty much a peak this summer, I think around June or July. And in one of its previous cycles, the 1989 cycle, there was the recession at the end of the Reagan era. And therefore its occurrence now may again signify recession. This Saturn and Neptune conjunction, of course, being in Aries, where Neptune just recently entered Aries on Sunday. And then there's also the Mars retrograde. And then there is also the Mars retrograde in Cancer, which is probably an aspect that's even more concerning regarding possible recession and even maybe depression. For instance, during its last cycle in 2007 to 2008, of course, we had the Great Recession. But perhaps more frightening, during its previous cycles in 1929 to 1930, as well as 1930 to 1931, we had the beginning of the Great Depression, which of course included the Tariff Act of 1930, which is very similar to Donald Trump's tariffs today. But then there's actually the stock market crash in October of 1929. And of course, there are two significant passages from the Book of Revelation. And of course, there are two significant passages from the Book of Revelation which may also signify a possible recession or maybe even a depression. First, we have Revelation 6, 5 through 6, regarding the black horseman, where it talks about what's seeming to be a famine, which seems to refer to a famine, a recession, or a depression, where people are struggling to purchase things. And then, of course, we have the infamous number of the beast, Revelation 13, 16 through 18, where the false prophet enforces the mark of the beast in order for people to buy and sell things. Again, suggesting a famine, a recession, or a depression. And more likely, a depression like the Great Depression, since Matthew 24, 21 through 22 suggests that this period is going to be a period of great tribulation, such as humanity has never faced and shall never again face. Of course, I take the opinion of the Talmud on Deuteronomy 4:6, which suggests that astrology is the wisdom and the understanding of the nation of Israel that is in the visible sight of the nations of the world. Shabbat 75a. I do not believe that astrology is supernatural. I think that supernaturalism is an absurd superstition. However, I do believe that astrology is an algorithm which uses symbols to help us understand the However, I do believe that astrology is an algorithm which uses symbols to help us understand the recurring patterns of nature and history which go in cycles that repeat themselves, and where we can therefore derive certain themes which allow us to predict certain outcomes of history. However, I do believe that astrology is an algorithm which uses symbols to interpret the recurring themes of history. Indeed, Genesis 1:14 suggests that the luminaries, the planets and the stars serve as signs or omens of such things.